Welcome to Business Agility Now, the podcast powered by Scaled Agile. I'm your host, Adam Mattis. This is the place to get advice, stories, and perspectives to help you work differently and build the future. Thanks for listening and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to the Safe Business Agility Podcast. I am sitting here with my good friend, Oskar Kawecki, who is a little bit of a pioneer in his own right. Oskar, basically, you've opened up the country of Poland for a lean and agile in enterprise. Is that true?
Thank you, Adam. That's pretty generous from you, and thank you. A humbling moment for me to say, but I am the proud first SPCT in Poland and in Central Eastern Europe. So this is a really great moment, I think, for the community in our country to basically open, as you say, this huge market of potential for SAFe.
So, Oskar, in the work that you do, and the first time we hung out, I learned a lot about Poland, and I learned a lot about one of the oldest countries in the world, and a lot of the history there. I mean, what kind of business are you primarily seeing most interested in changing how they work in Poland right now?
Oh, thank you, Adam. That's a really great question. First of all, Poland is really strong in manufacturing and is really strong in automotive. So obviously, because of the shift that we see currently in the market, they really need to change and they need to evolve. Also, Poland has the strongest and the most healthy financial market in Europe currently. So I also see a lot of interest, especially in finance sector, particularly in banking.
So what do you think are the big drivers for those businesses today in 2025? I mean, if you look at all that's changed in the world in the last 10 years, in the last year, right? I mean, there's been a lot, right? You look at AI, you look at, we did digital integration with literally everything for, I don't know, it feels like my entire career. So what is it about now that these healthy legacy businesses in Poland, what's driving them to say now's the time we have to rethink how we've done things for maybe centuries? Why now? What's the driver?
So today, the uncertainty is at its highest peak. And this is the reason why they are changing. So basically, the companies can no longer say, for example, we're a bank, as you said, with hundreds of years of legacy. And we simply leverage our position to do the business with our clients because we see that they have to compete not only with the other big companies, but also with the startups who are now messing up on the market a lot. Also, I see that the culture is changing a lot as well. So the people, they don't want to work in companies that only pay well. They also want to work in companies that have a really great culture, agile structure, when they can basically also feel that they are more and more important and involved. And so those two drivers, I believe, are the most important one. The ability to change in the ever-changing world, and also to basically be attractive to the people to actually come to work in your company.
There's a lot to unpack there, Oskar, and I think you hit some really cool things. And what I didn't hear you say is, well, we want to go agile, right? It sounds like there's some real need there and some real clearly defined outcomes. And I want to dive into those. But before we do that, I want to know about you. The people want to know about you, Oskar. Can you tell them just a little bit about, how you got where you are, who you are, where you grew up, what you did, and how you found yourself in this crazy space of business improvement that we all live and work in?
Oh, thank you, Adam. So obviously, I come from Poland, and I have really grew up in a family which had a lot of history. So my grandfather, he fought, for example, in the Second World War as his brother. And we knew in my family, especially during the communist times, that there was always a find for something better, for a better life, and obviously to live in a better country. So I believe this is something that my family has always been very strong and believed for, and I believe in basically the same the same rules, or let's say the same principles, are very important to me. And I come from the classical project management world, so I'm a PMP, and I've been doing projects for most of my life. And I still believe that we can work in waterfall, in environments when there is no uncertainty, where everything is being done the same way how we do it in the last, let's say, 10 or 15 years. That's totally fine. But I always also knew, and we're trying to seek a new and better ways of working. So as a Lean Six Sigma black belt, I have been always looking at the processes. This was always something, and basically the systems thinking was always in my point of interest. How can we actually build a system that is going to help us to build the company and to thrive? And I remember when I met you in person, and also Dean at Boulder, and Dean asked me actually this question, Oskar, why safe? And for me, the answer was very, very obvious, because if we can go lean and be agile at the same time, and I'm a very more lean person than an agile person, it was a no-brainer when I saw that in SAFE we embrace those principles. And basically, I strongly believe that the companies that we're working on in right now can be a better environment. And I would love my son and my daughter to work in a better environment that I did. And this is the main driver for me.
Well, I think, Oskar, I'm guessing we're about the same age. So you were probably, around 10 years old when communism fell in Poland? How old were you?
Excuse me?
When communism kind of like,
oh yeah,
when you left that world, how old were you?
Yeah. So I was about 10 years old, exactly. So I remember strongly, unfortunately, those times which were not that great.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of things about it that you don't want to remember, but I think from hearing you talk, there's a lot of things about those very formative years that probably drive who you are and what you want for your family now.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want them to live in a let's say society where I have to grow up, and I want something better for them.
What do you think are some of the biggest things that, and you don't have to get too crazy personal with this, but what are some of the things that you experienced growing up in that environment that really give you passion for the work that you do today? Because I think it would seem that there's some parallels, right? There's some things that you experienced and things that you saw that give you a strong driver to want to do things different today.
Thank you, Adam. So, the first thing, I believe, our education system, especially during the time of late communism, and also then those early days when I was at school, was very hierarchical. There were still physical punishments, for example, that we had to suffer at school, and this is one of the things that I really dislike, especially in the companies. So I always tell that for me, maybe this comes from, as you say, my personal experience. There is no room for managers in the companies, only for leaders. Meaning that if you're a manager, if you have the stick, if you're in your hand, that I feel like I'm back in school at those times when basically we were told what to do rather than encouraged to think for our own.
It was very much, I'm sure, about compliance and do as you're told, how you're told to do it.
Exactly.
Don't ask questions. Don't ask why. Don't seek a better way. Just comply.
Exactly.
I think, in some of the organizations I've worked in over the years, I mean, that's definitely the way that it is. I mean, there was one specific company that I remember working with. I was talking a lot to the executive leadership team about the things that we value, right? And how it's in their best interest from a competitive standpoint to give people some autonomy, to give them a clear direction so they can make the decisions in the best interest of their customers at a rapid pace. And the person I was speaking with, it was the COO. He looked at me and he said, Adam, why do you think that we're in this town? And I won't name the town because it kind of gives the company away, right? Because they're the only company in this town and they're largely in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the town that they're in is nice, but it's essentially all tied to this company, and everything that takes place in town is tied to the company. And he said to me, we chose this location more than 100 years ago because it assures that everyone that works here will do what they're told, because your entire family's here and you have a good life here. And if you want to keep that good life and you don't want to take your kids out of school, you'll do as you're told. Because if you don't and you're terminated, you've got to rip your family away from everything that they know. He said, we're all about compliance. We want everyone to do as they're told and not question. And I thought to myself, in this, it was pretty profound for me. And it was because you can't help those that don't want to be helped. And just like people, right, there's great people and there's people that want to do cool things. And there's some people that are just not interested and you can't motivate them. And that's got to be okay. And in the corporate world, there's that too. Not every company wants to be our vision of better. Some companies have been around for a long time and they're a little bit toxic, and that's who they intend to be. And, there's a place for everybody in the world. And, some of those companies, I'm of the mindset that they're not going to be around much longer because even, in those traditionally boring sectors, I guess we can say, the ones that are secure, the ones that are entrenched, the ones that are mandated to exist, they just don't need to change, except for the fact that there's a lot of people like you and others who see a better way. And it's really easy to build a startup now to start challenging that. So I don't know that they'll ever change. I do suspect that they'll become less relevant. So it's interesting. It's your story and the things that you experienced and how they, in some places, still that culture exists in corporate America. I mean, maybe it's not actual physical punishment, but it's definitely the mental equivalent. And that's who they want to be. And it's a really interesting thing because I think we'd all like to help them and help them change and create a better place to work for their employees. But you can't help those that don't want to be helped.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. And also, we have to, I believe, look at the psychological factor for many people. And sometimes I believe this is a trap when we come, so excited to the company and we say that, hey, we are going to help you. We are going to change how you work. But there are some people who really, really value stability as well. And they want to come to work and they want to know exactly what is expected from them. And they want to leave the work at 5 and forget about it. And we have to remember both groups and make sure that the psychological safety of the change is going to also be applied to those people who value stability above everything else.
All right, so let's go back and talk about what you're seeing in Poland today, right? And some of the business drivers that are pushing folks to change. So what is going on in Poland? And what is, I think I heard you say it's cultural and it's generational. And I think that's a really interesting thing. I think this is the first time in my career where I can think that we've had 4 very distinct generations in the workplace at the same time. And they each have very different views of how work should be done. So we've got the generation that's the age of our parents who are mostly retiring. You've got Gen X, who basically brought technology to most enterprises. Whether or not we like to admit it, we're old millennials.
Yeah.
we fall into that category.
Yeah.
And then you've got Gen Z.
Yeah.
And I think, our generation, especially skewing towards the younger part of it, and then Gen Z, they don't just say, I wish work were different. They demand it. So is that what you're seeing in Poland? Is that what's really driving some of the desire to change how companies work?
Yeah, exactly. And I believe for many of us, this is also something that is difficult. I hear and read many stories, and I speak with my friends who are in HR and they are recruiting. And we have situations that they tell me that simply some of the people, for example, they come late to work and they don't even feel bad about it.
It's just what they do.
Yeah, just what they do. And when they were asked why didn't you come to the meeting, he said I overslept, but maybe my body really needed it. So and they feel that is fine. And we can do 2 things. Either we can look at it from the perspective, hey, those people do not know what is the value of the work based on our experience, or we can and I think we have to rethink. Okay, so what can we do actually to motivate them to to come to work and not to oversleep, but to be motivated to have this alarm clock ready and to come excited to work. And I believe that this is maybe once again the factor that we already mentioned, that there is no room for the managers, but the room for leaders who are really setting up the environment for the people and for the teams to thrive. So you basically need to change from becoming the person who micromanages the people to actually build a healthy and exciting environment. And in Poland, we have the lowest unemployment in Europe. So there is a huge demand for workers, even though almost 2 million people from Ukraine came to our country in the last 2 years. So
there is a lot of good tech talent in Ukraine too. I mean, there's a lot of really cool platforms that I don't think people expect to, but they come out of Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of talent also came from Ukraine to us. And I believe that we're very lucky as a country because of the situation. But still, the unemployment is very, very low, and the competition for the best people is very, very high. So the companies that even would like to keep the hierarchical structure and keep the ways, the things like they were in the past, they simply need to keep up.
And I think that's one of the ways that SAFe as a tool can be very powerful, right? So you talk about, we want to empower people. We want to give them clarity and direction so that they can be their best and potentially on their own schedule. I mean, there's one of Daniel Pink's books. It's When: The Scientific Art of Timing. He talks about the different circadian rhythms that we all have. And some of the most high performing creative people are on a very different schedule than us. I mean, a lot of those people that are up all night gaming, that's when they write their best code. And then we try and force them to be their best from 9 to 5, and it's just not going to work. So one of the things that I think is cool about when you use the tools in SAFe the way that they're designed, and not to, if you put the SAFe tools in an organization that wants to be hierarchical, it's going to feel that way because that's how they're choosing to use them. But if you use them as designed, it can really create a mechanism that provides clarity and intent so that maybe you don't have to work the same schedule as everybody else. Maybe if you're like a 10 to 7 person and you have good clarity of intent and you have a good understanding of what needs to be done, and maybe there's a few days a quarter, a few days a month, or a few days a week or whatever it might be where you do need to be with your team and you come in during core hours. But then the other times you do your creative work when it works best for you. I mean, I think the mechanisms that we build can really enable that. But I think you hit on the key point, which is provided that we choose to use them that way, right? We don't need to see you in your seat during set hours. We don't need to ask you every 5 minutes what you're doing, change what you're doing, tweak it, touch it, whatever. We just need to be very clear about vision, intent, and purpose, and then get out of the way. And I think a lot of organizations struggle with that, right? I think the majority of organizations I worked with over the years struggled with the idea of vision. They couldn't really articulate what they were trying to accomplish at a grand scale over a mid-tier amount of time. And it's really hard without that to then empower people to give them clarity of what needs to be done because, well, we don't know. Then we just end up being a very reactionary culture. And then we're reprioritizing the backlog 100 times a week. And, you might have started this and created that commitment in PI planning, but then never mind because the wind changed. And since we don't have anything to anchor in, we can just kind of go with the wind. So I think you hit on some good points there. I think the business outcomes have got to be the reason why. I mean, I think we're past a stage in business agility where organizations are going to say, well, we want to be agile, so let's install Agile. And it's not about that anymore. And I think, you mentioned kind of the generations, the origin stories of why Agile, when we compare the old versus the new, they're not really relevant anymore, right? Because I think people our age are really the last ones to ever really have experienced a traditional waterfall environment to say, I remember when it used to be like this, and that's why I value this new way of working. I think for a lot of the younger millennials and Gen Z, well, this is just how we work. So I think understanding the origin story of Agile itself is important, right? So in 2001, the internet was born and, you no longer had to have a distribution channel and the ability to mass produce diskettes and books to get software to market. You just needed the internet. Like, that's still relevant because those same disruptive conditions are alive and well today. Desktop manufacturing, cloud computing, all of that. You can do anything you want if you have the ambition and the brains. Cost is rarely a barrier. So all of those things that came out of the Agile Manifesto, they're still relevant, and it's still important to understand why. But the whole waterfall v Agile thing, I just don't think it lands anymore. So we need to talk more about the outcomes we're trying to achieve and how to use the mechanisms to achieve those outcomes, and less about the dogma of remember those old times. Because I was sitting in Berlin last year with Joe Vallone, and he was telling a story about, his time at Nokia, his real tipping point. And I looked around the room and I realized not a single person in that room was born when the story Joe was telling was taking place. And for me, that was a big light bulb. We need to change how we talk about this, and we have to focus on outcomes and how to leverage tools to achieve the outcomes. And the dogma's got to go.
Exactly. So basically, whenever I work with companies, I always challenge the leaders and the managers that you need to rethink what you are paying the people for. And exactly, are you paying them to stare at the screen from 9 to 5, or are you paying them to actually generate outcomes? Because as you said, maybe I'm the most productive during the night, and I can do the same work in 4 hours that I would normally do when sitting 8 hours at the office. But this is really challenging for the companies. I once consulted for one of the automotive companies, and they had a tendency to, obviously they were working agile, they were working safe, but guess what? They didn't have people fully collocated to the teams, and there were people working 20% FTE in one team, 30% FTE in the other, etc., etc. And then I asked them the question, do we actually do the same practices in our production line? Do we have people who are working 20% of the day in one station, and then they move to a totally different station, leaving their power tools there? And they said to me, absolutely not. And I asked the question, why? Because it would disrupt the flow of work. Exactly. Is there any difference between software development and hardware development? Obviously, there is not. So you had a really a good point that we should be moving from the outputs to the outcomes, and also when looking especially at the new generation, exactly as you said, they do not know the old ways of working. They do not know waterfall. But what we know actually from the research is that, first of all, as you said, the vision matters a lot. So it's no longer, don't ask why we are doing this. Those people will be asking you the why 100 times until they understand it. Because, for example, today it's more important. Let's look at Tesla. And I know Tesla is maybe not the best moment to talk about Tesla right now, but still.
Well, Oskar, this is going to air like 3 weeks from now, so who knows what the world's going to look like in 3 weeks.
All right. So still, although Tesla pays slightly less than their automotive competitors in their R&D departments, they get around 1,000 applicants for a single job. 1,000 for a single job, because people really want to work there for the autonomy, because in Tesla, you can, for example, deploy code to production from the very first day.
Well, and you're working for the mission, right? You're not working a job. You're working for the mission. And it was when I worked with Under Armour, 15 years ago, it was the same way. For every open rec, there were 700 or 800 applicants. And that was a point in time where, there were a lot of jobs in the US. So people were actively looking to work there no matter what the job was. And you would have people that had, there was one woman who I remember distinctly. She was a senior vice president in a finance company who left that job to take an executive assistant position to one of the senior executives there just to get in the door. And, it worked out for her because, obviously she was a brilliant person. And once she got there and got to make an impact, she didn't stay in that role long. But people were that willing to come to the company because they want to be a part of the vision or the mission. And there was a unspoken rule that if you came to the company, you would take a demotion. If you were coming from the outside and you were a VP, well, you'd come as a director. If you were a director, you would come in as a senior manager, and so on. Because though you were bringing a lot of useful and good skills and experience to the table, you didn't know the culture. And the culture was what was driving the mission. So until you were aligned with that, you needed to take a step back and learn. And it was a really interesting thing. And it was a really cool thing to be a part of, because it was a bunch of A-player people focused on the same mission. And it was the most energizing thing I've ever been a part of. And I think when you can build that kind of a mission-oriented culture, you naturally attract the right people. And I think organizations that don't take the time to do that have no idea what they're missing.
Exactly. And I really love this new part in Agile for Hard Work course, when we say that you have to change two things. You have to change the ways how you work, but you also need to change the culture. And exactly, if the companies that do not do this, they will be falling behind. And also, what is interesting to me, as you said, that for the new generation, working in Agile, for example, feels very natural. And actually, the research also shows that the people, the young people, they do not cope very well with very big tasks. They always ask, please break it down to me to the smaller things so that I can actually manage it. So exactly as you said, maybe today or already in their mind and in the culture, there is that, hey, we actually embrace working in smaller batches because it's simply better, and we have never been taught like we were, that we have to work in those big ones.
I wonder if it's partially because of information overload that they want the ability to focus. Because if you think of, like your mobile phone and everything else that goes on, there's so many things constantly vying for your attention that you crave the opportunity to just focus and get something done. And it's Cal Newport talks about this in his book, Deep Work, right? And it's important to kind of understand the big picture of the task. But when it comes to doing deep technical work, you want to have the thing to focus on. You want to understand the outcome, and you want to work it to completion, because it's very satisfying. I think of some of the bigger initiatives I've worked on over the years, and I never even saw, I wasn't there for inception. I wasn't there for delivery. So I just did some stuff for a few years in the middle, but I didn't really know why, because I wasn't there for kickoff. And I don't really know how it turned out, because I was in a different role by the time it launched. And that kind of sucks. That's not fun. That's not motivating. You just end up being, and it reminds me a little bit of something I heard the other day that really struck me hard. And that's the difference between a software developer and a software engineer. Software developers are stuck in those kind of initiatives, just doing random tasks without understanding the problem. Software engineers solve the big picture problem, right? So they understand the root cause of the problem, they understand the desired outcome, and they create the path from problem to solution. And that was really interesting to me, because I never really thought about it. I just kind of use the terms interchangeably, but they're not. And a lot of organizations that we go into to do evolutionary work, we run into a lot of developers. And I think sometimes the concepts that we talk about are hard because they've not been trained and utilized to solve an entire problem. They've been used to execute tasks. So that's a hard shift for them as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as you say, working with the teams, and especially this a classical quote that I will not help the testers because I'm a developer, and just give me the requirements. My job is to code. This is what you are paying me for. And exactly, this is how we, and I always challenge the teams. Are we really here to deliver according to the requirements, or are we actually trying to solve our customers' problems? And this is where UX, I believe, also kicks in, and I see now there is in the greatest companies there is now shift even from the product owners to the UX designers who are actually driving the teams now. Because if, exactly as you say, if you do not know who your customer is, and if you do not know what the pain points are, even if you're a developer, you're going to really have a hard time to actually deliver something meaningful to them. So this is a really huge shift from not only delivering according to the requirements to seeing the big picture, understanding the problem, and helping our clients to actually solve those problems for them.
there's a lot of good things going on in the world right now. I mean, you touched a little bit on experience architecture, which is a really important thing for me. So, leading with design first. I think that there is more ownership that's trying to be taken over a product view. I learned about product management in a very pure way, and it's always kind of hurt my soul a little bit to see how it's applied in some legacy businesses. And I was talking to Debbie Bray yesterday, and we kind of had a profound discovery. And it's the organizations that most easily embrace the way of working that's important to us, that embrace a customer-focused view, that embrace simplicity and elegance in architecture. They're pretty much the ones that were born after like 2002, right? So they have a different perspective of the world and how things should be done. And it's the ones that existed much before that focused on large systems development, that focused on just building really big, complicated things, and they used IT as a cost center. They're the ones that continue to struggle with it, right? So like when we talk about becoming a digitally integrated business, they struggle the most because they still struggle to view themselves in that way. And I think that's a different problem to solve. And it's not one I've thought a lot about, because it just seems logical, right? It seems logical to say, hey, it's 2025. Everything's a digital business. Like business people and developers in IT, you're not different. You're solving the same problems. You need to understand each other. It just seems logical. Why don't you do it? But they just are not built to work that way in those organizations. So there's a big cultural thing to overcome that I don't think many people have really considered. And it's an interesting problem, right? Because I think it seems so obvious from the outside how you should work and why you'd want to work that way. But the cultural history runs deep, right? That's the way we do it here thing is just, it's so hard to overcome, and we can admire the problem, but I don't know that enough work has been done to really figure out how to overcome the problem.
Yeah, exactly, Adam. And I'm really, really excited because, I come from the business. I have a C-level experience. I'm an executive MBA. So for me, it was always obvious to try to also understand what are actually the needs of those C-level executives from those legacy companies that you're mentioning. And I really love that the main theme of today's summit is basically solving the real business problems. And I believe, I know that it's going to sound a little bit controversial, but the main advice that I can give to all the fellow Agile coaches around the world is, don't try to sell Agile. Agile is not it's not exciting to the executives. Profitability matters more. So obviously, trying to reduce the cost and to mitigate the risk. So, and I really loved the quote that Agile is just a vehicle. It's just basically a component that can help you to achieve those. So if you can get the executives excited that you are going to build a software profit stream to them, exactly as you said, that the IT is going to shift from a cost center to basically value generating engine. This is what's going to be exciting to them, and you should try to focus on that. And I wouldn't even use the word Agile. I always tell them that I'm maybe not the classical Agile coach, or maybe the T as well, because if you would ask me, Oskar, why do we need to go Agile? I will tell you, I don't know if you have to be Agile. Let's see what problems do you have, and let's try to think if the new ways of working can help us with that. And obviously, in say we can use both Lean, we can both use Agile, etc., etc. It had been tested in thousands of successful deployments. So let's not reinvent the wheel, like the Spotify model. Great, we are going to read a couple of pages of paper, but nobody actually tells us what we need to do. But we have a system that we can simply apply to your company. Obviously, it will need to be tailored a little bit, but it's going to help you to solve the problems, and it's going to help you to generate more revenue. And this is all why we are here in the very first place.
The way that I like to think about it is, the way we work is a kitchen. You never go to a restaurant and ask about the kitchen. You expect that the kitchen is capable of building the things that are important to you and the things that you want, but I'm ordering the food. I'm not ordering the kitchen. And that's kind of like an executive's perspective. Like, these are the problems I have. These are the outcomes I want. I don't care how you get there. I just want these things. So if you can build them a kitchen that's going to get them those things faster and more consistently, then they're happy. To draft on your point of, I wish Agile coaches would, the one thing I would like to throw in there is, I wish that they would stop blaming leadership, right? Because anytime you hear anyone gripe in this community, it would have worked, but leadership, whatever. And I often find that there's not many people in this space who have held those roles to understand the challenges and pressures that they're under, and they therefore don't know the best way to communicate to them, like you said. I mean, in my role now, if someone came up to me and said, we need to do Agile, I would say, I don't have time for that. I have these other things that are more important. Like, if you can help me solve these problems, then I'm interested. But don't sell me this thing, right? Sell me solutions to these problems. And then if we're not communicating well, I mean, you're the consultant. It's your job to understand me and help bring me along. It's not my job to necessarily understand everything that you're telling me. And that's not how this works. I have business problems to solve. But people that have never had board pressure or P&L pressure or margin pressure or any of those things, they don't really understand the pressure of those problems. They don't understand the incentive model. So it's hard to coach to that. And what we do, because we don't necessarily understand how to communicate, we just blame. Because again, it would just be so easy if leadership would do whatever it is that we want them to do. But you've not yet considered all that's at stake for those people. So I think there's a lot of empathy that needs to be done. And I also think it's really cool to see some of the people that are coming into this space. So the former CIO of FedEx, global FedEx, Fortune 50 company. I mean, that guy's seen some stuff. Like, he knows pressure. And now he's in this space of helping leaders understand the what and the why behind the need to change. And he walks in with experience and presence that I don't know there's another Agile coach in the world that does. Because he's been in that boardroom. He's been on those investor calls. And guess what? When you Google his name, a lot of really impressive stuff comes up that validates his experience. So when he sits down with any other CIO, they listen. Because unless they're in, a Fortune 50 company higher ranked than his, they all have a lot of admiration and respect because he accomplished something that they hope one day they can accomplish. So I think we need more of that. And I think we need a lot less finger pointing and complaining, and a lot more understanding and seeking to fill the knowledge gaps and the experience gaps that some folks just frankly have.
Yeah, and is it this actually what coaching is all about? To deeply feel and understand the problems of the person that you are coaching, and how this person to achieve their goals with confidence. And exactly as you say, the people who have never held those positions, that they do not know, especially the pressure of the time that those people are facing. And it's like also with our Agile delivery, like if I will tell you, the first 3 months we are going to prepare the launch of this first art after the year, etc. No, I have a board meeting in the next couple of weeks. Those are my problems that I need to solve. Please help me to solve those problems in the next upcoming weeks so that I can walk to this board meeting with confidence. And this is also the way how we should treat it, the Agile and safe implementation incrementally. Try to understand what are the biggest problems, put it on the top of the backlog, and help them to overcome them, rather than looking at those multi-month or yearly plans. That it's great that they are there, but we should rather focus on the real problems and solving them right here, right now.
Oskar, I think that's a great place to leave it, and it's with the idea of meet the client where they are, seek to understand and deliver the value that the client wants to receive, not the value that you want them to receive.
Exactly. Couldn't said it better.
Any closing thoughts, Oskar?
It was the best view that I ever had during the breakfast at the Safe Summit. So those of you who have not been here in Sorrento, you really missed it.
Yeah, we ran an experiment with this one. So we typically do the European summits in a large central European city that's very easy for a lot of people to get to. And we said for this one, well, what could a resort experience be like? So we came to Sorrento. We're at the Hilton Palace. You can literally see the ocean and the cliffs and Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius from every window in the hotel. It's a really cool spot. It's a smaller audience, but it's a much more impactful, I think, experience because of where we're at and just the energy is cool. So I am also sorry if you're not here.
The final thought then, I believe as we're in Italy and the same way as in Poland, the family matters the most. So yeah, here I feel a little bit more cozy, as you said, and I feel like being here with all my friends, you obviously as well, and the whole Scaled Agile family. I like it better here.
Oskar, I appreciate you. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
While I'm sitting in the studio today, I thought I'd take a minute to talk to you about Safe Studio, a game-changing platform for learning and practicing safe, no matter where you are in your safe journey. Picture this, your team streamlined like never before with common self-paced learning and the right assets at the right time, all at their fingertips. Safe Studio isn't just a tool, it's a breakthrough in aligning your team's effort with your big picture goals. And we've all been there. You go to a training class and you leave with all this energy and great ideas, but you get back to your desk on Monday and you're a little bit lost about how to apply all of that great content to your context. Well, Safe Studio helps you avoid that ambiguity by providing clarity, efficiency, and most importantly, resources to help you hit the ground running in your new way of working. But Safe Studio doesn't stop there. You'll also find tools to connect to the greater Scaled Agile community, simplified course management in the virtual classroom, access to all of our platforms like piplanning.io, Comparative Agility, and others. You'll find templates to facilitate product development activities and safe events, along with toolkits, video tutorials, and good gracious, so much more. Check out Safe Studio today and see for yourself at safe.scaledagile.com. If you like what you hear, please refer us to your friends and colleagues and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Adam Mattis. See you next time.